Welcome to my podcast. Today I'll be talking about auction draft advice in fantasy hockey, the top 5 small forwards in NBA right now, and fantasy football waiver wire players to pick up for week 4. Drafting in an auction league is quite different than drafting in a standard league. Typically in an auction league you have a budget of $200 to build a roster. The key to drafting a good team in an auction league is knowing the worth of players. For example, if you are going to spend over $60 on a player, you better be sure they are going to produce. When nominating players, sometimes you should nominate a player that you know will go for a lot just so you start a bidding war between other managers. Be patient. Be very selective of the players you use the bulk of your money on. The majority of your money will usually be used on 3 or 4 players. Personally, I like to draft a star forward with my first pick, then a stud goalie with my second pick. My third and fourth picks are usually forwards as well. I would say the majority of your budget will be used on forwards and goaltending. You really don't need to use a whole lot on your defensemen. You can get very good defensemen for $1 to $2. Just like in a standard draft, make sure you draft a well-balanced roster. If you are new to an auction draft, I suggest you do a few mock drafts before the actual draft. In next week's podcast, I'll be talking about draft advice for head-to-head leagues. Players to pick up in fantasy football for week 4. Quarterback Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has the 6th most fantasy points among quarterbacks this season. He should continue to have a strong season. Running back Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson rushed for 23 yards and 1 touchdown. He also had 81 yards receiving in week 3. Johnson is now locked in as a key part of the passing game for the Browns. Running back Wendell Smallwood. With Darren Sproles injured and given the other options the Eagles have, Smallwood should get the opportunity to be the go-to guy. Wide receiver Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan has 68 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns in week 3. He seems to be a huge part of the Patriots offense. Wide receiver Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard was a huge part of the Giants offense in week 3. He had 133 yards receiving and a touchdown. He looks to build upon this performance for week 4 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tight end David Djoku. David Djoku is starting to become a red zone target, making him a tight end to own in deep leagues or dynasty leagues. Defense, Detroit Lions defense. Detroit Lions defense has put up 10 or more fantasy points in each week so far this season. They are the most added defense in fantasy. Kicker Ryan Succop. Ryan Succop has put up 10 or more fantasy points in each week so far this season. He looks to continue this streak against the Houston Texans. Next week I'll be talking about players to pick up for week 5. Top 5 small forwards in the NBA right now. 1. LeBron James. LeBron James is still the best small forward in the NBA right now. Not only is he the best small forward, he is universally recognized as the best player now. Until he retires, I don't think any active player will overtake his throne as the best small forward. Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is one of the hardest players to guard in the league. The guy is 7 foot tall but is able to move like a guard and can pull up from 30. A guy his size should not be able to move as quick as he can and shoot as well as he can. 3. Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is one of the best lockdown defenders in the NBA right now. He has also developed into one of the NBA's best scorers as well. You can make the argument that Kawhi is the 2nd best player in the league. 4. Paul George. Paul George is one of the best all-around players in the league. He is a great scorer, rebounder, and passer. He also defends other teams' top players on a nightly basis. 5. Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony is one of the most prolific scorers in the last decade. Even though he has a bad reputation right now, no one can dispute his talent. Melo is one of the toughest players to guard one-on-one in the league. Next week I'll be talking about the top 5 centers in the NBA right now. Next podcast I'll be talking about fantasy hockey advice, fantasy football waiver wire advice, and the top 5 centers in the NBA right now.